The signals stopped without warning. One moment, screens showed numbers and lights. The next moment, everything went dark. Power failed across cities, towns, and villages. Trains stopped on the tracks. Elevators froze between floors. Phones went silent in people's hands. The night felt sudden and heavy, like a deep breath held too long. High above Earth, alien watchers observed in silence. Their screens filled with red signs and broken data. To them, this was the final proof. Earth had finally broken. Human systems were weak. Human order was thin. Without their machines, humans would fall apart. On the ground, fear spread fast. Streets filled with shadows. Sirens wailed, then faded as backup power died. People stepped out of buildings, unsure where to go. Some shouted. Some cried. Some stood still, listening to the strange quiet. Jack stood on the corner of a dark street, holding a small flashlight. He was not a leader. He worked at a repair shop and lived a simple life. But when the lights went out, he did not run home. He saw an old man trip over broken glass. Jack helped him up. He saw a woman trapped in a car with a jammed door. Jack and two others pushed until it opened. "Clear the road," Jack said. His voice shook, but he spoke anyway. "We need space for walking." People listened. Not because he was important, but because he was calm. Emily lived 3 blocks away. She worked at a small store and knew many people by name. When the power failed, she grabbed what she could carry. Bottled water. Canned food. Candles. She set them on a table outside her building. "We share," she said to the crowd. "No fighting. We all need this." A few people argued. Fear made them loud. But most stayed quiet and nodded. Emily smiled at a crying child and handed her a candle. The small flame looked weak, but it pushed the dark back just enough. Radios were dead at first. Then, somewhere, a weak signal cracked through. Static filled the air, followed by a broken voice. "Testing, if anyone can hear." People froze. Jack turned his flashlight off and listened. Emily closed her eyes. The voice returned, clearer this time. It spoke slowly, repeating the same words again and again. Power was down. Help was limited. Stay calm. Help each other. Jack felt something shift inside his chest. It was not hope, not yet. But it was movement. Groups began to form. Neighbors who never spoke before now stood together. Someone found glow sticks in a storage room. Another person brought blankets. A young man climbed a roof and used a whistle to guide people away from broken wires. The aliens watched all of this. Their records showed no central control. No strong signal. No clear command. This confused them. Without direction, humans should scatter. Without power, order should fade. But humans did not scatter. They moved. Slowly, carefully, imperfectly, but together. Jack spent hours clearing paths. His hands hurt. His back burned. Still he kept going. Each time he felt tired, someone else stepped in. No one asked for payment. No one waited for orders. Emily stayed near her table until the food was gone. Then she walked door to door, checking on the elderly. She wrote names on paper, making lists of who needed medicine, who needed help. Her handwriting was messy, but the list mattered. In the distance, a fire started. The glow painted the clouds orange. People pointed and worried. Jack ran toward it with others. They used buckets, dirt, anything they could find. It took hours, but the fire died. Smoke filled the air, but the building still stood. The night passed slowly. Above the planet, the alien watchers adjusted their models. Earth was damaged. That was clear. Systems were broken. Communication was weak. By their measures, this was failure. But the numbers did not explain the movement below. At sunrise, pale light touched the streets. The city looked tired. Windows were dark. Roads were cracked. But people were still there. Walking. Talking. Helping. A radio crackled again. Stronger this time. A generator had been repaired somewhere. The signal spread, short and simple. Help was coming. It would take time. Until then, hold on. Jack leaned against a wall and laughed softly. Emily sat on the curb, rubbing her sore feet. They exchanged a tired look. No words were needed. Humans were hurt. But they were moving. Alien observers watched Earth with careful eyes. Their screens showed broken lines and missing data. Cities had lost power. Satellites drifted silent. Networks failed again and again. The observers marked Earth as unstable. In their long records, this stage always led to panic. When systems fell, species turned on each other. Fear became violence. Order vanished. They waited for that moment. On Earth, fear was real. People felt it in their stomachs and chests. Nights were darker than before. Food was limited. Medicine was hard to find. But panic did not take control. Instead, small groups formed everywhere. In a quiet neighborhood, Michael stood in front of an old generator behind a closed store. It was dusty and rusted. It had not been used in years. Michael wiped his hands on his jacket and looked at the machine like an old friend. He had worked as a mechanic once before the world changed. It might run, he said to no one in particular. Two others stood nearby holding flashlights. Michael opened the side panel and checked the wires. Some were loose. Some were damaged. He worked slowly, carefully. Fuel was poured in from old cans found nearby. When the generator coughed, then roared to life, people cheered softly. Lights flickered on inside the store. One room. Then another. It was not much, but it was enough. Across town, Anna walked between buildings with a bag over her shoulder. She had trained as a nurse long ago. She did not have a hospital now, only a small room in a school. Still people came. Cuts. Burns. Fear. Anna spoke in a calm voice. Sit here. Breathe. You're safe. She cleaned wounds with boiled water. She used old bandages and clean cloth. She showed others how to help. Soon the room was full of quiet workers. One held a light. Another kept notes on paper. Another comforted children. No one asked Anna for proof or papers. They saw her work. That was enough. Messages began to spread. Without phones or screens, people used voices and hands. Notes were written and passed. Runners moved between streets. Someone climbed a roof and shouted updates at sunset. A bell rang when food arrived. A whistle warned of danger. Each message was simple. Power here. Water there. Help needed on the next block. The alien observers tracked movement patterns. Humans should have been disorganized. Instead, paths formed. Not planned by one mind, but shaped by many small choices. They saw Michael's generator bring light to nearby streets. That light pulled people in. Work followed. More machines were checked. More ideas shared. They saw Anna's medical room become a center. From it, trained helpers spread out. Care moved faster. Fear slowed. The observers increased pressure. They cut remaining signals. They blocked more data. By their rules, this should push Earth over the edge. On the ground, nights grew harder. Cold came. Rain followed. Supplies ran low. Still, the groups did not break. Michael taught others how the generator worked. He did not keep the knowledge to himself. If I fall, he said, someone else must know. Anna did the same. She showed people how to clean wounds, how to calm shaking hands, how to listen. Children helped too. They carried water. They watched doors. They learned quickly. Arguments happened. Mistakes were made. Some people left. Some gave up. But the group stayed. From above, the observers noticed something new. Humans were not just surviving. They were changing. Old habits faded. New ones formed. People shared more. They spoke more clearly. They planned together even without tools. The models failed again. One observer sent a quiet signal to the council. Subject Earth does not match collapse patterns. Another replied, recheck data. The first observer watched a small scene on a cracked street. A woman handed bread to a stranger. A man fixed a cart for no reward. A child laughed when a light turned on. Data confirmed, the observer sent. Humans adapt. On Earth, Michael stood beside the generator as it hummed. He felt tired but proud. Anna leaned against a wall after a long night, her hands sore but steady. Messages continued to spread. Hope moved with them, not loud, not bright, but real. Humans were not finished. They were learning again. The Watchers decided to push harder. From far beyond the sky, they changed their methods. More satellites failed at once. Machines that still whispered to each other went silent. The sky, once full of moving lights, became empty and still. No signals. No guidance. Just a dark, quiet space above the world. To the Watchers, this was the final wait. No world had endured this stage before. On Earth, people felt the change right away. Radios went dead again. The small signals that gave comfort vanished. Some looked up at the night sky and felt alone for the first time. Fear moved through streets like cold air. Voices lowered. Steps slowed. But something else moved as well. Trust. In a workshop near the center of the city, David stood at a long table covered in broken tools. Wrenches with cracked handles. Lamps that no longer worked. Small machines pulled apart and waiting. David had always liked fixing things. He believed that anything made by hands could be repaired by hands. Come closer, he said to the group around him. Watch this part. He showed them how to clean metal with sand and cloth. How to check a simple switch. How to listen to a machine, not just look at it. He did not speak fast. He did not hide mistakes. When something failed, he smiled. That's fine. Now we know. People took turns. Hands that once typed on screens now turned screws. Fingers learned new skills. Confidence grew slowly like a plant pushing through hard ground. Across the street, Lucy sat at a small desk made from stacked crates. Paper covered the surface. Names, dates, notes. She wrote everything down. What tools were fixed. Where food was stored. Who needed help. Why write it all? Someone asked. So we don't forget, Lucy said. So we don't lose what we learn. She kept records of success and failure. When a generator broke again, she knew who had fixed it before. When medicine ran low, she knew where it had gone. Her papers became as important as any machine. The watchers observed these actions with confusion. Knowledge should have been lost. Skill should have faded. Instead, humans were storing and sharing what they learned, using only memory and ink. Pressure increased again. The sky stayed silent. On Earth, night fell heavy and deep. Clouds covered the stars. Streets went dark once more. For a moment, it felt like the first night all over again. Fear pressed close. Then a small light appeared. A lamp turned on in a window. Then another 2 streets away. A workshop glowed softly. A hallway filled with warm yellow light. Each light came from effort. From repaired wires. From shared fuel. From patient hands. David wiped sweat from his face as a fan began to spin again. Lucy smiled as she marked another success on her page. People noticed the lights and moved toward them. Not to take but to help. More hands arrived. More ideas followed. Someone brought food. Someone else brought laughter. From above, the watchers saw a pattern they could not break. Darkness did not end movement. Silence did not end cooperation. The models changed again. Failure was delayed. Collapse was uncertain. On Earth, the night passed slowly. Lights stayed on. Stories were shared. Tools were cleaned and stored. Records were protected from rain. When morning came, the city looked different. Still damaged. Still tired. But stronger in ways no signal could measure. Fear had risen. So had trust. And as long as even one light stayed on, humans would keep going. Far from Earth, the alien councils gathered in silence. Great chambers filled with soft light and moving symbols. Data flowed in slow streams. Charts showed loss, damage, and broken systems. By every old rule, Earth should have fallen apart by now. Collapse had been predicted with high certainty. But the numbers did not end the story. The councils reviewed images from the surface. No great armies. No planet-wide command. No sudden return of advanced systems. Instead, they saw streets being cleared. Lights coming back in small pockets. People standing together in simple ways. Unity was not expected. Some council members argued. This is delay, not recovery, one said. The fall will still come. Others remained quiet, watching longer. They saw humans choose patience over panic. They saw help move faster than fear. The debate continued without anger, but with growing doubt. On Earth, the sky stayed quiet. No signals came back. No answers fell from above. The planet did not fight the sky. It did not shout into the dark. It did not beg. It healed itself. In one part of the city, Mark and Helen stood on a small balcony. Below them, the street was no longer empty. People walked freely now. Stalls had formed where food was shared. Tools were passed from hand to hand. Laughter drifted upward like music. Mark leaned on the rail, tired but calm. I didn't think we'd see this again, he said. Helen nodded. She watched a group of children chase each other between buildings. Their voices were bright. Their steps were light. The street was safe enough for play, and that mattered more than any report. Nearby, adults watched the children with quiet smiles. They took turns keeping watch. No one told them to do it. They simply understood. The councils observed scenes like this across the planet. Healing without orders. Order without control. Strength without force. They checked again for resistance. For weapons aimed at the sky. For signs of anger turned outward. They found none. Humans were not trying to strike back. They were not trying to prove anything. They were focused on each other. On Earth, a woman helped a stranger learn to read from a shared book. A man fixed a door so wind would stay out. Neighbors cooked together and shared stories late into the night. Each act was small. Together they changed everything. Mark and Helen went downstairs and joined the crowd. Mark helped lift a broken bench and set it right. Helen handed out cups of warm drink. They felt useful. They felt connected. Children ran past them laughing. One tripped and fell. Before fear could rise, 3 hands reached out. The child stood, brushed off dust, and laughed again. High above, the councils reached no final answer yet. The models were broken. The old measures failed. Earth was not behaving like a defeated world. Unity had taken root. On the ground, no one waited for rescue ships or distant voices. No one stood still hoping to be saved. Humans saved each other. And in doing so, the city breathed again. The Watchers reached their final choice. From deep space they studied the last streams of data. Earth was scarred. Cities were dimmer than before. Many systems were still broken. By old standards, this should have been the end of the story. But the truth was clear. Humans were not ended. They had begun again. The Watchers made their final mark in the Great Record. Not failed. Not conquered. Not erased. The mark was simple and rare. Resilient. Aware. Ongoing. No further pressure was approved. No correction would follow. The fleets turned away in silence. Massive shapes shifted in the dark, their lights fading one by one. No message was sent. No warning given. The sky remained quiet, just as it had been. On Earth, people did not notice the departure. There were no signs to see, no signals to read. Life was already moving forward. As night slowly lifted, the sky began to change color. Dark blue softened into gray. Then gold touched the edges of the clouds. Tom stood on a rooftop holding a warm cup in his hands. He had not slept much, but his eyes were clear. Beside him, Grace wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and breathed in the cool air. They watched the sunrise in silence. Below them, the city woke up. Doors opened. Footsteps echoed. A repaired tram moved slowly along its track. Lights stayed on, steady and calm. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Voices carried, relaxed and strong. Grace smiled. "It feels different," she said. Tom nodded. "Not better," he replied. "But real." They remembered the first night. The fear. The dark. The feeling that everything familiar was gone. They also remembered what followed. Shared food. Fixed tools. Quiet courage. Children ran through the street, chasing the light. Someone played music from a hand-powered speaker. Laughter filled the space where silence once lived. The Watchers were gone, but their test remained. Earth stood changed. Humans had seen how fragile things could be. They had learned how strong they could be together. Tom and Grace looked up one last time, not searching the sky for answers, but greeting the day ahead. The world was wounded, but it was alive.